Back here on HQ, Jordan Love continues to play mistake-free football as the Packers improve to 2-0 on the season. Love threw for nearly 300 yards, adding 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, marking it as his 9th straight start with 0 INT. It's pretty good. Packers slightly behind the Eagles as second favorites to win the NFC at plus 370. Jordan Love's best targets last night, that is the center of our player spotlight, which is presented by Auto Trader, powered by Auto Intelligence. Tucker Kraft set a new career high with 124 receiving yards, and it also was his first 100-yard game since, get this, high school. Kraft's 124 yards was the most by a Packers tight end in nearly 10 years. Both he and Zach Ertz have both caught a touchdown in each game this season. To talk more other Week 1 performances, how about we start with this guy? Danny Dimes is back. Week 1 for the Colts' new quarterback saw him put together a nearly perfect performance against the Dolphins. 7 drives, 7 scores, no punts, no turnovers. Doesn't get much better than that. So let's talk more about these other Week 1 performances. And I mean, it's hard to compare what Daniel Jones was able to do in his Colts debut. Weren't sure when he was named the starter if it was the right decision. I think we're pretty sure after Week 1. Let's roll back time a bit to, we're calling this the original dating website. Some people have heard of it, some people not. Hot or not. But this time we're doing NFL edition because, Ryan Wilson, a lot of teams surprised us Week 1. So you're going to tell us who's hot and who's not heading into Week 2. And we got to kick it off with the Red Hot Colts, who crushed the Dolphins in Week 1. What or who do you credit most with this red-hot performance?
Hey, Emily, good to see you. Shout out to producer Noah for picking me to do this segment, because who better to turn back time to the year 2000 for hot or not than Ryan Wilson.
You were our first call.
You know what? The conversation has to start with that young man we just saw in that graphic, Daniel Jones, because you talked about it. He came over from New York, where thumbs were down in terms of how he had worked out with Brian Daboll as the former first-round pick. He landed in Minnesota last year as a backup, and then he made his way to Indianapolis, and all he did was light it up in Week 1. And you could say, hey, turns out the Dolphins stink, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but he scored on 7 straight possessions. They scored every single time they got the ball on Sunday. And I think secretly, or maybe not so secretly, to get through this thing, Shane Steichen, the head coach, is going to be incredibly excited to work with Daniel Jones. It gives him a little bit more versatility than what he would have with Anthony Richardson, who we all know, coming out of Florida, had only played 13 games. That inexperience had followed him into the NFL. The running game was really good. They have Tyler Warren to go along with their other pass-catching options, and the defense played really well. Look, this is going to sound crazy, and this is why Daniel Jones is super hot, quotation marks. This team is going to have a chance to battle for that division if this keeps up. So I was incredibly impressed, and I don't know if you swipe right or check mark or circle or whatever, but shout out to Daniel Jones for that Week 1 performance.
It's usually like a score out of 10, but I mean, that's pretty close to a 10, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, they became the first team to score on every single drive in the Super Bowl era, so that's pretty solid. But tougher defense, and the Broncos waiting for them in Week 2. So what do you expect we see from Daniel Jones against Denver?
Yeah, so it's going to be a real test, right? And I think the good news is that we saw Cam Ward. Cam Ward's numbers weren't great against Denver, but they were on the road, and that Denver defense got after in terms of pressuring Cam Ward. The offensive line's going to be a little bit better in Indianapolis, and I think they're going to hold their own. Bo Nix didn't play great. Certainly not as great as we saw him play down the stretch. So there could be some concerns there with the continuity of that offense on the other side of the ball against the Broncos. If that defense in Indianapolis can continue to get after it. And Lou Anarumo was in his bag, as the kids say, against Tua and that Miami offense. So I won't be surprised if we see Daniel Jones manage that game. He's not going to play like he did in Week 1, but the running game gets going. They lean on Tyler Warren. They get the ball to their playmakers, and Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, and that defense makes some plays. I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I think we're all going to feel better, and please don't play this back if it doesn't work out. We're all going to feel better about our new number 10, Daniel Jones. By the way, change your number to number 10, Daniel Jones, because that's the grade you're getting in Week 1.
I like it. No, it's already been clipped. We'll save this for Sunday. Meanwhile, despite his age, Aaron Rodgers still hot behind center. To continue with the dating references, though, what do you think of the chemistry between Rodgers and his offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith?
Yeah, so he talked about that after the game, and he listens to every single thing that's said about him, it sounds like. And he said, yeah, some people were saying that we weren't going to get along, and I don't know if that's because Arthur Smith has that mustache or whatever it is, but they got along pretty well based on what we saw against the Jets. And, Aaron also admitted that he held a grudge against the Jets for how things went down there, and maybe that was motivation as well. But look, Arthur Smith's thing is this, running the ball and then play action off of that, and we saw that work pretty well against the defense in New York that is also a really good unit. So the Steelers defense stunk, and let's be honest about that. But Aaron Rodgers and that offense kept with it. They kept stringing drives together. 4 touchdowns. You see here on the graphic to several different receivers, and he got DK Metcalf involved. All those things you have to be excited about. And I'll just say this, the running game for the Steelers wasn't great. It was okay, maybe even a little below average. So if you can get that going to complement what they're doing throwing the ball, I think you have to feel pretty good. You're going to go up against a Seattle defense and Mike McDonald. That's also a really good unit. And as long as they're handing out numbers, I'll give Aaron Rodgers a 7.9.
I like it. Okay, so there's the other side. There's the not hot, and got to start with Cam Ward. The Titans had negative 28 yards on 10 plays when Denver blitzed. Ouch. I think 6 sacks as well. So how does he play it forward to this week against the Rams and bounce back?
Not great, Emily. That is not great, those stats you just read off there. But I will say this, and I mentioned this to producer Noah yesterday. When you go back and watch Cam Ward's throws, under all the duress and the pressure he faced and the lack of his playmakers stepping up for him, I thought he did pretty well in a tough environment in his debut. But the numbers are the numbers. 12 for 28, didn't turn the ball over, so you can feel good about that. But he needs some help, and he needs help from the offensive line playing more consistently. He needs help from his playmakers catching the ball. Calvin Ridley had a drop. Alec Minor had a drop on the sidelines there on that play that should have been challenged, so I won't call it a drop, so maybe that goes on head coach Brian Callahan. But in terms of when you go back and watch these rookie quarterbacks in their first games historically over the last 3 or 4 years, Cam Ward was not afraid of anything. The results were not there, and there are ways they can certainly improve. But this has to be a not in terms of what we're talking about here. I will give him a 5.1, just north of average, because I was impressed with what he was able to do under some pretty trying circumstances. But he does have to improve, and he does have to improve against a really good team this week. So we'll see how that looks. But again, when you're going up against the Rams, the defense is not going to get any easier.
Yeah, the Rams gave up the second fewest points in the NFL in Week 1. To the Texans, who the Titans know very well. Meanwhile, the #1 pick last year also on our not hot list for being a little erratic in his performance. I mean, Caleb Williams started 10 for 10, which was great, but then it went off the rails a little bit in the fourth quarter. So what did we learn about this year Caleb Williams, and how does he turn things around in Week 2?
Yeah, I'm taking a deep breath, Emily, because I want Caleb to succeed. And I thought he had a chance to do it last year. And look, we can point all the fingers we want. They fired their offensive coordinator 6 weeks into last season. They fired their coach after the season. They made a bunch of wholesale changes. They brought in Ben Johnson so that we're out of excuses. And then that team collectively laid that egg in that game against the Vikings. And there were some bright spots, but even when you go back and watch Caleb's throws, he missed some throws even when he started 10 for 10 in terms of where the ball was supposed to go. And then, as you noted, off the rails we went in the second half. J.J. McCarthy was not going to be stopped, and he played out of his mind. I got to give Caleb like a 3, maybe a 3.5 best case scenario. He has to play better. The ball has to come out on time. He has to help his offensive line with the pre-snap penalties by getting the snap count right in terms of the cadence and all the things that you need to do and getting your team out of the huddle and the ball snapped, and it was not great. So 3.5, very disappointing. And as a parent, you want better for your kids. I need to see better in Caleb Williams. I'm not mad at him. I'm just disappointed in him.
That's the worst, though. Talk about parenting. Anytime your parents are disappointed in you, that's way worse. I'd just rather you be mad at me at that point. I love that you speak of Caleb Williams as if he is your child, though. But yes, we're all rooting for his success. Even the weather in South Florida can't really heat up the Dolphins, who are squarely at the top of our not hot list. So moving forward, what is the fix for the Fins?
Time machine, I think, is their best case scenario, and going back to getting Dan Marino and bringing him to the future. I'm going to call out producer Noah one more time. My morning was ruined because I went back this AM and watched Tua's throws again, and that was not fun. I don't recommend anyone do that. The way that team started, and it's not all on Tua, by the way. Mike McDaniel is taking a lot of the blame, and he's the head coach, so he has to. The offense was not prepared in the first half of that game. I'm not even sure if they crossed midfield in the first half. There were a ton of turnovers, a ton of mistakes, a ton of missed blocks, a ton of poor throws from Tua, and Xavier Howard, who played for the Dolphins and now plays for the Colts at cornerback, said all we have to do was clog the middle, and that's all they did. They had 5 defenders play a lot of cover 2, more than any other team last weekend, Emily, which leaves 5 second-level defenders just standing there waiting for Tua to throw in the ball, and that's what happened. So expect to see that this week when they face the Patriots. I don't know what the easy fix is. Tyreek's not happy. The running game was okay, but you're not going to win the game by running the ball when you're down 30 points. So, again, this is a 0.8. Like, I'm not even giving you a 1 because that would be disrespectful to 1. You guys have to play better. You're grown men who make NFL salaries. Show up, do your job, and I am mad at you. Like, forget being disappointed. I'm just straight up angry with what I saw in Indianapolis.
Well, we're really sorry for ruining your morning. Hopefully your afternoon is turning a corner and you're having a better day, but we are because you were here, Ryan Wilson. Thank you so much. I can guarantee his Sunday is going to be spectacular, though, because the NFL on CBS is back for week 2. We have a full slate of action on Sunday, headlined by Bills at Jets in the 1 o'clock Eastern window, and then Broncos at Colts, that game we discussed, at 4:05. You can watch on CBS and stream on Paramount+.